Hey everyone, it's DJ. Today I'll be showing you how I stretch and starch a doily. So this is a doily I just finished. I use this pattern, which I just found on Pinterest. That's where I find all my patterns. And the beauty of a pattern like this that's a chart is that it doesn't matter if it's in English or not. And most of the time they will be in Russian because Russians are like the best at making doily patterns. I don't know why. They are just so good at it. Anyway, so I found this really pretty pattern and I just love the design in the middle that kind of looks like flower bud with leaves or almost like a thistle or some kind of flower. And I do really like this kind of pattern in doilies because it does this kind of thing around the edge. It just makes a really nice like pattern that lays flat. And so when I'm doing a doily pattern like this, for each row that I finish, I just mark it off with a highlighter. And each row, I just go like that. And then I know exactly where I am, because this, to me, is so much easier to look at to tell where you are in a pattern than the ones that are written out in words and paragraphs. And you can always read these patterns no matter what the language they're in, because all the symbols are always the same. A dot is always a chain. This symbol, like a cross, is always a double crochet. The short symbol, like that, is a single crochet. And there's not many here, but you can see one like right here and right here, those ones. And then the only other stitch on this particular pattern is this, which is a triple crochet. And these are clusters, so they look like this or together at the top, and that is a cluster of 3 triple crochets. And so really these patterns are quite simple. They look intimidating, but if you just go row by row, they're quite easy, and you can always tell how many times you're going to repeat the pattern around by the number at the very beginning. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the pattern repeats itself. This pattern right here repeats itself 8 times. So let's take a look at our finished project. I used number 10 crochet thread in kind of an off-white ivory color, a more natural color instead of just pure white. And I used a 2mm hook, just like this. I like the 2mm because it's just easier to work with, and I highly suggest getting ones with good grips like this because these small hooks can just hurt your fingers so much if you're just gripping onto the actual metal instead of having a good grip, especially when you're doing something as intricate and time-consuming as a doily. One other thing to be aware of is when you find some of these patterns online, not all of them are going to be correct or will work out correctly or lay flat. So if you get about 5, 6 rows in and you can just tell that there is no way that this pattern is going to lay flat with any amount of stretching or starching or water, then you need to stop that pattern and find something else. I've had that happen a few times where the math doesn't work. Whoever made the pattern used a computer and didn't actually test the pattern, and the math does not work out so that it can lay flat or even look good at all. And sometimes I've gotten as far as up here, and for some reason the math didn't work out and I had to either add a stitch or skip something to make it fit. And it wasn't noticeable at the end, but I had triple checked everything and it wasn't my doing. And the previous row, the math just wasn't correct, because doilies are all about math when they're in multiples of 6 or 8. Anything like this where you're going around and around in a circle, everything has to match up correctly for it to look exactly perfect. So here I am, and this one went beautifully because I know this is going to lay flat. Even though it's bubbled here in the middle, if you kind of stretch it with your hands, you can tell it's going to lay flat. And this is going to get a lot wider when we stretch it fully. So what you need for stretching and starching a doily is a spray bottle of water, or you could use your iron that has the spritz function on it, but I prefer a spray bottle. Or if it's a really, really bad tight one, you might have to just wet the whole thing in the sink and then just wring out all the extra water. But I find it easier to work with if you're just spritzing it and not completely drenching it. And also, you're going to want some heavy finish starch. So this one, like, it would be best to get the absolute crispest one you can find, but just some starch. And I like this. It's the really cheap brand from Walmart. It's like $2. And then the best thing you can have are these. These are blocking mats, and they are just foam mats that are interlocking like puzzle pieces, so you can make your surface as large as you need. I got these off Amazon for pretty reasonable. I feel like they were less than $20. It's been a while. But they also come with a whole pack of these nice pins to pin your project to these mats. So for this one, I am going to need 4 of these mats, and it comes in a pack of 9. So you can do like 3 by 3. So I'm going to put these together, and if you don't have blocking mats or you don't crochet enough to make it worth the purchase, you can absolutely use cardboard. That's what I used all the time before I got these. These are just easier in the long run because I do create a lot of doilies, or even if you're doing crochet granny squares or something like that, and you need to block a lot of things and you just need a bigger surface area, these are awesome for that. And also, I love the grid on them so that you don't have to measure using a ruler. And they're just really nice. Also, cardboard, when you spray it with water or the starch, it will bend. It'll bubble and it'll buckle up, which is not super fun. And if you use poster board, that can also happen when you spray it with enough water or starch. It will begin to lose its shape, but these do not lose their shape, which is awesome. So I like to start by taking my doily and lightly spritzing it all over with water. I mean, you want it to get it pretty well soaked, not to the point where you have to wring it out, but you want to be able to really manipulate this thing and stretch it. And get those edges, and be prepared for a lot of pins. If you don't have these T-pins, you can use regular sewing pins, but these are just easier to work with your fingers, and you're going to need a lot of them. So I'm going to put the very center of my doily into the center here, and that's not totally necessary, but just to have it there so we don't lose it. And now we are going to go around and grab all these little edges. This doily pattern has these little picots, so I'm going to stick the pin in the picots. And you want to work across from each other. So grab one, kind of hold the middle, and just stretch it out a little bit. We're going to have to move all of these, so don't worry about it. We're just trying to establish how wide this thing is going to be after it's all stretched. So here you can start to see the pattern really emerging as we're stretching it. And these are all going to move. This is not a permanent thing right here because we want it to get it exactly the same length and width all the way around. We want a perfect circle. So see, this one feels a little short, and then this one might be too tight. We're going to move all these, and that's what the grid is here, which is good for, to make sure everything is really getting perfect. It would be better if these mats had circles on it, but we'll take what we can get and we will figure it out. Plus, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I mean, it's a doily. It's made out of cotton. It's a fabric, so it can stretch, it can move. So we don't want it so tight that when we starch it and release these pins, it's just gonna snap back together. But we want it so that it is tight enough to really showcase the design. That's what these chain sections are here for, to separate all these lovely petals and all these leaf designs that are just beautiful. And if you're using cardboard, I just suggest using a ruler or a tape measure to check your length and width all the way around to make sure they're even. You could do that on here too, if you don't want to worry about counting the squares. See, this one's pulling a little tight. You want that middle star or flower shape to be perfectly round. You can kind of go off of that. And this might start to feel like an excessive number of pins, but you will not regret it once you starch this. Otherwise, it will not look perfect all the way around the edge, and you won't have all these nice points here when it's done. So just keep pinning. Okay, I think we got them all. So since my center kind of moved away from the actual center of the mat boards a little bit, I am just going to go ahead and use this. So you just want to take the ones that are exactly across from each other and measure them, and that is exactly 18. I did not plan that. I did not know that, but that's really nice. So then just go around, and this one isn't quite at 18, but that one's tight, and that one can move a little bit, and then just keep moving them like this. Just little adjustments all the way around, like the hands of a clock. And I believe we're back to the beginning. So that looks really nice. And so now that everything is 18 inches apart, we just want to go back and look to see if any of these points need to be shifted to the left or the right a little bit to make them just perfect with each other. I say I am happy with that. That looks awesome. So now I just spray it with starch until it just basically floods it. I don't even iron this. This is just what I've done because you can try to iron this, but this is foam board and you don't want to melt it. And I just spray this super thick layer on top, and then I just leave it to dry for a couple days. I always like the smell of starch. Make sure to get those edges. Don't worry if you're overspraying. We're gonna sop up the extra. Here we go. Now go get yourself a paper towel, and if anything is going to drip or leak off the edges, just go around and kind of dab it. And if there's any like big puddles in the middle, just dab those. But it's all going to evaporate, and the more you leave on there, the better if you can, and just let it dry. And then after that, you can take all the pins off and it'll be nice and stiff and crisp, and it'll hold its shape. So I'll be back in a couple days when it's totally dry. All right, the doily is all dry and it's nice and stiff, so now we can take out all the pins. Look how beautiful and just perfectly stiff this is. It is awesome. The edges look amazing. And at this point, you could put this on the ironing board and do a second layer of starch with the iron over it if you want to. But this is laying just beautifully. So I am happy with it, and just look at that beautiful pattern. It looks even better against a dark surface. Here is the finished doily on a dark wood table surface. It just is so beautiful. I love these patterns, this like bud, flower, and leaf design, and these other leaves. And the edge came out so nicely with these little points. It is gorgeous. I can't wait to give it as a gift. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped.